What she discovered beneath the cracked concrete of her inherited dam would transform renewable energy forever and turn her into the most pursued woman in the power industry. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know which country you're watching from, and if this incredible journey inspires you, smash that subscribe button, because tomorrow we've got another mind-blowing story that will leave you speechless. The rolling meadows of Pine Ridge County stretched endlessly under the Colorado sky, their gentle slopes dotted with aspen groves and weathered granite formations that had witnessed generations of dreams and disappointments. The small rural community of barely 2,200 residents had maintained its quiet rhythm for decades. Where neighbors still waved from pickup trucks, children played in tree-lined streets without fear, and change came as slowly as the seasons themselves. Rachel Torres had never imagined owning property anywhere, let alone in the remote mountains of Colorado. At 31, she was drowning in an ocean of debt from her 7-year-old son Jake's ongoing treatment for severe asthma and type 1 diabetes. The medical bills arrived like clockwork every month. $147 for the continuous glucose monitor, $623 for insulin. Supplies, $290 for the inhaler refills, $420 for the specialist visits. Each envelope felt like a small dagger, reminding her of how far behind she'd fallen, despite working every available shift. Working triple shifts as a respiratory therapist at Rocky Mountain General, while trying to maintain some stability for her brilliant, determined child, had become an impossible balancing act that was slowly destroying her health and sanity. The divorce 2 years earlier had left them financially shattered when her ex-husband David disappeared, leaving behind only a forwarding address in Phoenix and promises to send money soon that never materialized. Rachel had been seriously considering bankruptcy when the certified letter arrived on that gray Tuesday morning in March. The envelope looked official and intimidating, the kind that usually contained bad news about overdue payments or legal proceedings. Rachel's hands trembled slightly as she opened it, expecting another collections notice or court summons. Instead, she found something that seemed impossible. Eleanor Hartwell passed away last month, the estate attorney's formal correspondence stated in precise legal language. As her sole surviving niece, you have inherited the Silverbrook Dam property and its 47 acres in Pine Ridge County, Colorado, along with all structures, outbuildings, and water rights associated with the property. Rachel stared at the letter for what felt like an eternity, reading and rereading the words as if they might vanish or transform into something that made sense. The paper felt real enough, the law firm's letterhead appeared legitimate, and the detailed legal descriptions seemed authentic. But the content felt like a cruel joke or elaborate scam designed to prey on desperate people like herself. She had only met great-aunt Eleanor Hartwell twice in her entire life, once at a chaotic family reunion when Rachel was 8, and again at her grandmother's funeral 6 years ago. Eleanor had been a mysterious, sharp-eyed woman in her 70s who spoke in riddles and seemed to carry profound secrets behind her piercing green eyes that seemed to see right through people's facades to the truth beneath. Rachel remembered Eleanor as someone who observed everything but revealed nothing, always listening intently while others filled the silence with chatter, her weathered hands constantly sketching in a leather-bound notebook that she never let anyone see. During that funeral reception, Eleanor had approached Rachel with an intensity that felt almost supernatural. "You have your grandmother's spirit," Eleanor had said quietly, studying Rachel's face with unnerving focus. "Strong women run in our family, child. We endure things that would break others, and we find ways to protect what matters most." At the time, Rachel had assumed it was just the kind of vague encouragement older relatives offered at funerals. But now, she wondered if Eleanor had seen something more specific. The inheritance felt like a miracle wrapped in a nightmare of complications. The dam property came mortgage-free, which should have been a blessing, but it also came with decades of deferred maintenance. Property taxes Rachel couldn't possibly afford on her current income, and the terrifying prospect of uprooting Jake from the only medical support system he'd ever known. The stability they'd built, fragile as it was, represented years of careful coordination with specialists, pharmacies, and insurance companies. Denver offered Rachel steady employment at a hospital where she'd built a reputation as one of the most skilled respiratory therapists on staff. Her supervisors trusted her with the most complex cases. Her colleagues respected her expertise with ventilator management and emergency airway procedures. More importantly, Denver provided Jake's access to the pediatric specialists who managed his complex medical conditions. Dr. Rodriguez, the endocrinologist who had finally achieved stable blood sugar control after 2 years of adjustments, and Dr. Kim, the pulmonologist whose innovative treatment plan had reduced Jake's emergency room visits from monthly occurrences to rare events. Moving to rural Colorado meant abandoning everything familiar for the complete unknown, potentially jeopardizing Jake's health for the slim possibility of financial relief. The nearest major medical center would be over an hour away, and Rachel had no guarantee she could find employment that would provide the specialized pediatric care Jake required. But the crushing weight of city life had become unbearable in ways that extended far beyond the financial pressure. Their cramped studio apartment on Denver's east side felt more like a prison than a home, paper-thin walls that carried their neighbors' arguments, domestic disputes, and loud music that interrupted Jake's sleep every single night. The building's ancient heating system cycled between stifling heat and bitter cold, triggering Jake's asthma attacks with frustrating regularity. The neighborhood itself had deteriorated dramatically in recent years. What had once been a working-class area, with decent schools and safe streets, had transformed into something that kept Rachel awake at night with worry. Drug dealers operated openly on the corner 3 blocks from Jake's elementary school. Break-ins had become so common that most residents had given up reporting minor thefts. Just last month, Rachel had found used needles in the playground where Jake liked to practice shooting baskets. The medical insurance Rachel fought so desperately to maintain still left them with co-pays and deductibles that devoured most of her paycheck before she could address basic needs. $340 per month after insurance. His insulin supplies ran another $520. The continuous glucose monitor that prevented dangerous blood sugar episodes required $280 monthly for sensors and transmitters. Regular endocrinologist visits cost $420 each. Pulmonologist appointments ran $380, and the quarterly comprehensive evaluations that both specialists required cost over $1,200 each time. These medical expenses created monthly financial obligations of nearly $3,400 before considering rent, utilities, groceries, or any other basic necessities. Rachel's salary as a respiratory therapist, even with overtime shifts, barely covered $4,200 per month after taxes. That left less than $800 for everything else, $650 for their studio, utilities $180 during winter months, groceries $320 for special diabetic-friendly foods, and transportation $160 for bus passes and occasional taxi rides to medical appointments. The mathematics of survival had become impossible. Every month, Rachel performed a desperate balancing act, deciding which bills could be delayed, which necessities could be postponed, and which credit cards still had enough available balance to cover emergency expenses. She had become an expert at negotiating payment plans with medical providers, coordinating prescription assistance programs, and finding food banks that offered fresh produce suitable for Jake's dietary restrictions. Jake, despite his medical challenges and their difficult circumstances, had always been drawn to wide-open spaces and fresh mountain air. During their rare weekend escapes from the city, usually camping trips to state parks that cost nothing, beyond gas money, his breathing improved dramatically. His energy levels soared and his blood sugar remained more stable than it ever did. In their polluted urban environment, those brief escapes revealed a different side of her son. In nature, Jake collected interesting rocks and minerals, photographed wildlife with Rachel's old phone, and demonstrated a natural curiosity about geology and ecology that his city school never had resources to nurture. He dreamed of having a dog impossible in their tiny apartment, with its strict no-pets policy and barely enough room for their existing furniture. But a dream that represented everything their current life couldn't provide: space, freedom, and a simple, childhood joys. Maybe we could try it for the summer, Rachel had suggested one evening as they sat at their fold-out table reviewing Aunt Eleanor's inheritance paperwork together. The documents were extensive and confusing, filled with legal terminology about water rights, mineral rights, and structural assessments that meant nothing to someone trained in respiratory therapy rather than property law. See how it feels. Meet the neighbors. Figure out what the property is actually worth, she continued, though part of her wondered if she was being irresponsibly optimistic about their ability to manage such a dramatic life change. Jake's eyes had lit up with excitement, but the expression was tempered by the practical concern that shouldn't exist in someone so young. 7 years of managing chronic medical conditions had forced him to develop an adult understanding of logistical complications that most children never had to consider. "What about my doctors and your work?" asked his small voice, carrying the weight of someone who understood that medical care couldn't be taken for granted or easily replaced. Dr. Rodriguez said there are excellent specialists in Boulder. "About an hour away," Rachel replied. Having already spent countless hours researching medical care in the area during her lunch breaks at the hospital, the University of Colorado has a pediatric endocrinology program that's supposed to be even better than what we have here. And I can find respiratory therapy work anywhere. Hospitals always need qualified therapists, especially in underserved, rural areas. The research had been encouraging in some ways. Pine Ridge County had a small but modern medical center with emergency services and several family practitioners. The nearest major hospital was Maplewood Medical Center, about 55 minutes away, which offered comprehensive pediatric services and had an excellent reputation for diabetes management. Several patient reviews mentioned shorter wait times and more personalized attention than the overcrowded urban hospitals where Jake received his current care. "The question is whether you want to try something completely different," Rachel continued, watching Jake's face carefully for signs of fear or excitement. "It would mean leaving this apartment, leaving your school, leaving everything we know. But it might also mean fresh air that doesn't make you wheeze, space to run around, and maybe even, can we really get a dog?" Jake had interrupted with the hope that only 7-year-olds can summon for life-changing possibilities. His face transformed with anticipation, and Rachel realized this dream had been more important to him than she'd understood. "If we can make it work, yes, we can definitely get a dog," she promised. Feeling simultaneously hopeful and terrified about the commitment she was making, Jake had immediately begun researching dog breeds online, creating lists of potential names, and drawing pictures of the golden retriever he imagined running alongside him through mountain meadows. His enthusiasm was infectious and heartbreaking, a reminder of how many simple childhood experiences their urban poverty had made impossible. The decision had been made with the kind of desperate optimism that comes from having limited options and unlimited determination. Rachel gave notice at Rocky Mountain General, arranged for Jake's medical records to be transferred to specialists in Boulder, and used her entire savings account, $2,840, accumulated over 3 years of cutting every possible expense to rent a moving truck for their modest possessions. The 4-hour drive from Denver to Pine Ridge County took them through Colorado's spectacular changing landscape, from urban sprawl to suburban developments to rolling farmland that seemed untouched by modern pressures. Jake pressed his face against the passenger window, documenting their journey with phone photos of cattle, horses, and fields that stretched to distant mountain ranges. "Mom, look at all the space," he said with wonder as they crested a hill and saw the valley spread below them like something from a nature documentary. "There's nobody else around for miles and miles." "That's going to be a big adjustment," Rachel replied, feeling her own mixture of excitement and terror as she contemplated the isolation that would soon become their reality. Part of her welcomed the idea of escaping urban crowds and constant noise, but another part worried about the practical implications of living so far from immediate help if Jake experienced a medical emergency. The Silverbrook Dam property sat at the end of a winding gravel road that meandered through mature pine forests and overgrown meadows where wildflowers had reclaimed the land from whatever agricultural purposes it might have served decades earlier. The caretaker's house, a modest two-story wooden structure painted a faded sage green with white trim, showed its age through sagging front steps and weathered siding. But the basic structure appeared solid and well-maintained. The bones were good, as Rachel's grandfather might have said. A wide wraparound porch offered stunning views of the valley that stretched toward distant snow-capped peaks. The property included several outbuildings, a large equipment shed that looked surprisingly well-maintained for its apparent age, a smaller structure that might have been a workshop or studio, and what appeared to be the remains of a control station from the dam's operational days. But the centerpiece of the property was the dam itself, a concrete structure about 35 feet high that spanned a narrow section of the Silver Brook River, creating what had once been a substantial reservoir. The structure was clearly old, but seemed architecturally sound, though Rachel's untrained eye couldn't assess its actual condition or safety. "It's bigger than our apartment," Jake observed as they pulled into a circular driveway beside a garden area, where someone had clearly invested considerable effort in landscaping that was now beginning to return to wilderness. "Everything's bigger than our apartment." "Everything's bigger than our apartment," Rachel agreed, parking their rented moving truck beside what had once been carefully maintained flower beds. The scale of space they now apparently owned felt overwhelming after years of measuring their lives in square feet. The dam itself, however, was clearly in a state of disrepair that would require attention Rachel couldn't afford. Crack ran down one side of the concrete face, and the reservoir behind it had drained to less than half its original capacity, creating muddy shoreline areas where water had once reached. Signs warning of structural damage were posted at regular intervals along the top of the dam, suggesting safety concerns that would eventually need professional assessment. As they stood on their new property, surveying the magnitude of what Eleanor had left them, Rachel felt simultaneously grateful and overwhelmed. The inheritance represented possibilities she had never dared imagine, but also responsibilities she had no idea how to handle. Painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple that Jake captured with his camera phone. For the first time in years, Rachel could hear actual silence, no traffic noise. No sirens, no neighbors arguing through thin walls. Just the gentle sound of wind through pine trees and water flowing over the dam spillway. "Mom," Jake said quietly, his voice filled with awe, "I think Aunt Eleanor wanted us to be happy here." Rachel pulled her son close, breathing air so clean it made her chest feel lighter. "I think you might be right, buddy. I think she might have saved us." What neither of them could have imagined, as they watched their first sunset over Pine Ridge County, was that Eleanor Hartwell had indeed saved them, but in ways far more extraordinary and dangerous than simple financial relief. Hidden beneath the cracked concrete of their inherited dam lay secrets that would transform not just their lives, but potentially the entire future of renewable energy. The broken dam that seemed like just another maintenance headache was about to become the key to the most valuable discovery of the 21st century, and Rachel Torres, the divorced respiratory therapist who had come to Colorado seeking only stability for her son, was about to become the guardian of innovations that powerful interests would kill to control. But that night, as they unpacked their few belongings in a house that felt like a mansion compared to their studio apartment, Rachel and Jake simply felt grateful for space, silence, the possibility of a fresh start in a place where boys could finally have dogs, and their mothers could breathe freely for the first time in years. The morning sun streaming through Eleanor's lace curtains felt like a revelation after years of waking to the harsh neon glow of streetlights and the constant hum of urban traffic. Rachel stretched in the comfortable bed that had apparently belonged to her great aunt, marveling at the silence that surrounded their new home. No honking horns, no sirens. No neighbors shouting, just the gentle sounds of wind through pine trees and birds. She couldn't identify singing melodies that seemed designed to heal frayed nerves. Jake appeared in the doorway, already dressed, and radiating excitement that had been impossible to contain since their arrival. His breathing sounded clearer than it had in months, and his continuous glucose monitor showed stable readings throughout the night. Something that rarely happened in their Denver apartment, where stress, pollution, and irregular sleep patterns constantly disrupted his system. "Mom, there's so much stuff here," he announced, bouncing slightly on his toes. Aunt Eleanor had books about everything, Rocks, plants, water, engineering. And there's equipment in the shed that looks like it. Came from a science fiction movie. Rachel smiled at her son's enthusiasm, while internally cataloging the overwhelming scope of what they'd inherited. The house itself was far larger than anything she'd expected. With 3 bedrooms, 2 full bathrooms, a spacious kitchen, with modern appliances, and a living room dominated by a stone. A fireplace that looked like it could heat the entire structure during Colorado's harsh winters. But it was Eleanor's personal belongings that revealed the true complexity of their inheritance. Every room contained evidence of a brilliant, methodical mind, obsessed with engineering and innovation. Bookshelves lined most walls, filled with technical manuals, patent documentation, scientific journals, and what appeared to be extensive personal research notes written in Eleanor's precise handwriting. The kitchen table was covered with detailed sketches of mechanical devices. Rachel couldn't identify intricate diagrams of turbines, generators, and water flow systems that suggested Eleanor had been far more than just the eccentric ant family. Stories had portrayed. These weren't casual hobby sketches, but professional-grade technical drawings, complete with measurements, material specifications, and performance calculations. "Jake, let's explore together," Rachel said, her nursing background, making her cautious about letting her son investigate unfamiliar equipment without supervision. Some of this machinery might be dangerous if we don't understand how it works. Their first systematic exploration of the property revealed the true scope of Eleanor's mysterious work. The equipment shed contained sophisticated testing apparatus, precision tools, partially assembled devices that looked like miniature versions of industrial power generation equipment. Everything was meticulously organized and carefully maintained, suggesting Eleanor had been actively working until very recently. A workbench along one wall displayed dozens of small-scale prototypes, each labeled with dates, performance specifications, and detailed notes about modifications and improvements. The most recent entries were dated just weeks before Eleanor's death, indicating she had continued her research right until the end of her life. "Look at this, Mom," Jake called from across the shed, where he'd discovered a series of photographs mounted on the wall. The images showed the dam in various stages of construction and operation, dating back to what appeared to be the 1950s or 1960s. In several photos, a young woman, Rachel, gradually recognized as Eleanor, stood beside engineers in construction. Workers, pointing at blueprints and seeming to direct complex operations. "Aunt Eleanor helped build the dam?" Jake asked, studying a photograph that showed Eleanor in work clothes. Hard hat and engineer's boots, clearly in a position of authority rather than just observation. "It looks that way," Rachel replied, examining the photos more closely. In every image, Eleanor appeared to be explaining something to male colleagues, who listened with obvious respect and attention. These weren't casual snapshots, but professional documentation of serious engineering work. A filing cabinet in the corner of the shed contained additional surprises that transformed Rachel's understanding of her great-aunt's life and work. Folder after folder held correspondence with universities, engineering firms, and government agencies dating back decades. Eleanor hadn't been just involved in the dam's construction. She had apparently designed revolutionary improvements to its power generation systems that were decades ahead of their time. One particularly thick folder labeled Silverbrook Innovations Confidential contained patent applications for hydroelectric technologies that Rachel, despite her medical rather than engineering background, could recognize as extraordinarily advanced. The designs featured components and approaches that seemed to belong in a modern research laboratory rather than a rural dam from the mid-20th century. A letter from the U.S. Patent Office, dated 15 years earlier, acknowledged Eleanor's application for revolutionary loom-packed hydroelectric power generation systems, and noted that the proposed technologies represented significant advances in renewable energy efficiency and environmental integration. The letter requested additional documentation and field testing data before proceeding with the patent approval process. "She was an inventor," Rachel murmured, the realization dawning that Eleanor's reputation as an eccentric recluse had concealed something far more significant. "Jake, your great-great-aunt was apparently a brilliant engineer who spent decades developing new ways to generate electricity from water." The deeper they explored Eleanor's records, the more remarkable her accomplishments appeared. Correspondence with major energy companies revealed attempts to license her innovations. But most letters ended with polite rejections, citing concerns about market readiness and implementation costs. Several companies had offered to purchase her patents outright, but Eleanor had apparently refused all offers, preferring to continue her independent research. A journal Rachel discovered in Eleanor's bedroom provided intimate insight into her great-aunt's motivations and frustrations. The entries revealed a woman driven by profound environmental concerns and frustration with an energy industry that prioritized short-term profits over long-term sustainability. May 15, 2018, one entry read, "Tested the microturbine array again today. Efficiency rates exceeded 340% of conventional systems while using less than 20% of the water flow. The environmental impact is negligibly beneficial for fish migration and riverine ecosystems." But Pinnacle Energy rejected the proposal, again, claiming the technology is too advanced for current market conditions. Translation: it threatens their existing infrastructure investments. Another entry from more recently provided chilling insight into Eleanor's growing concerns about corporate suppression of innovation. July 3, 2023, representatives from 3 major energy companies have visited in the past month, all offering increasing amounts for exclusive rights to the patents. They don't want to implement the technology, they want to bury it. I've decided to accelerate the documentation process. If something happens to me, these innovations must survive to serve their intended purpose. The final entries in Eleanor's journal, written just weeks before her death, revealed her deliberate planning for Rachel's inheritance. September 20th, 2023, completed the legal arrangements. Rachel has the strength and integrity needed to protect this work from those who would suppress it. She's faced impossible challenges with her son's medical needs, demonstrating the kind of determination required to navigate what lies ahead. The patents alone are worth over $200 million. But their true value lies in their potential to transform renewable energy generation while healing rather than harming our planet. Rachel sat heavily in Eleanor's desk chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she'd inherited. This wasn't just a rural property with a broken dam. It was a research facility containing decades of work that could revolutionize clean energy production, and Eleanor had specifically chosen her as the guardian of these innovations. Trusting her with responsibilities that seemed impossibly beyond her qualifications as a respiratory therapist. "Mom, you need to see this," Jake called from the living room, where he'd been examining Eleanor's bookshelf. He held a thick leather portfolio that had been hidden behind a row of technical manuals. Inside were detailed architectural drawings of the dam, but not as it currently existed, as Eleanor had envisioned transforming it. The drawings showed a sophisticated power generation facility integrated into the existing dam structure, featuring the innovative turbine systems documented in Eleanor's patents. According to the specifications, the modified dam could generate enough clean electricity to power the entire Pine Ridge County, while actually improving the river's ecological health through enhanced water oxygenation and flow management. But it was the financial projections accompanying the architectural plans that took Rachel's breath away. Eleanor had calculated that implementing her innovations at Silverbrook Dam alone would generate over $3.2 million annually in clean energy sales, with minimal environmental impact and virtually no ongoing maintenance costs beyond routine inspections. More remarkable still, Eleanor had designed the system to be scalable and replicable. The Silverbrook installation was intended as a demonstration project that could be adapted to thousands of similar sites across North America, potentially transforming rural economies while providing sustainable energy solutions to communities that had been overlooked by major utility companies. A separate folder contained correspondence with environmental organizations, university research programs, and international development agencies, all expressing interest in Eleanor's work. Letters from representatives in developing countries requested information about adapting her technologies for remote communities lacking access to reliable electricity. University researchers praised her innovations as breakthrough developments that could democratize clean energy access. Scope of Eleanor's vision was breathtaking and terrifying. Rachel was beginning to understand that her inheritance included not just valuable patents, but responsibility for technologies that could transform global energy production if properly developed and implemented. The weight of such responsibility felt overwhelming for someone whose previous experience with complex systems involved mechanical ventilators rather than hydroelectric generators. Her phone rang, interrupting her contemplation of Eleanor's legacy. The caller ID showed Dr. Rodriguez, Jake's endocrinologist from Denver, returning her call about transferring care to a specialist in Boulder. "Rachel, I've been in contact with Dr. Patricia Vance at the University of Colorado," Dr. Rodriguez reported. "She's one of the top pediatric endocrinologists in the region and has experience with complex cases like Jake's. I've forwarded all his records, and she can see you next week for an initial consultation." The news provided reassurance that Jake's medical needs could be properly managed in their new location, removing one major source of anxiety about their dramatic life change. Dr. Rodriguez also mentioned that CU's medical center had excellent respiratory therapy programs and was actively recruiting qualified therapists for their pediatric unit. "There's something else," Dr. Rodriguez continued. Dr. Vance mentioned that the mountain environment often provides significant benefits for children with asthma and diabetes. The clean air and reduced stress can lead to dramatic improvements in both conditions. Jake might actually be healthier in Colorado than he was in Denver. After ending the call, Rachel felt a surge of optimism about their decision to embrace Eleanor's inheritance. The medical concerns that had kept her awake since deciding to leave Denver appeared to be resolving themselves, and Jake's obvious happiness in their new environment suggested they had made the right choice despite the uncertainties. But it was Jake's next discovery that provided the first concrete evidence of the extraordinary value hidden within Eleanor's seemingly modest inheritance. While exploring the basement of the house, he had found a secure room that Eleanor had apparently used as her primary research archive. "Mom, there's a door down here that needs a special key," Jake called from downstairs. "And there's a note with your name on it." Rachel descended into the basement to find Jake standing before a heavy steel door with multiple locks and what appeared to be a modern security system. The note, written in Eleanor's precise handwriting, was addressed for Rachel Torres and attached to a sealed envelope. "My dear Rachel," the note read, "if you're reading this, you've begun to understand the scope of what I've entrusted to you. The secure archive contains the most critical documentation of my life's work, patents worth over $200 million in current market value. But more importantly, innovations that could transform humanity's relationship with sustainable energy. The access codes are your son's birth date followed by my initials. What you choose to do with these technologies will determine whether they serve their intended purpose of healing our planet or become another suppressed innovation buried by corporate interests. Trust your instincts, protect what matters most, and remember that extraordinary challenges often reveal extraordinary strength we didn't know we possessed." Rachel entered Jake's birth date followed by EH into the security keypad. The multiple locks disengaged with precise mechanical sounds, and the heavy door swung open to reveal a climate-controlled room filled with filing cabinets, computer equipment, and display cases containing prototype devices that looked like they belonged in a high-tech research laboratory. The walls were lined with framed patent certificates, each representing innovations that Eleanor had developed over decades of independent research. Rachel counted over 40 patents, covering everything from microscale turbine designs to revolutionary water flow management systems that could generate substantial power from minimal water movement. A computer workstation in the center of the room contained detailed digital archives of Eleanor's research, including video documentation of her prototype testing, correspondence with international energy experts, and financial projections for implementing her technologies worldwide. The computer's desktop displayed a folder labeled "For Rachel Implementation Guide," containing what appeared to be comprehensive instructions for protecting and developing Eleanor's innovations. As Rachel opened the folder, she discovered that Eleanor had prepared for every contingency. There were detailed legal strategies for protecting the patents from corporate interference, lists of trusted allies in the scientific community who could provide technical support and step-by-step plans for implementing the Silverbrook demonstration project. But it was the final document in the folder that revealed the true urgency of Eleanor's legacy. A letter dated just days before her death warned of increasing corporate pressure and provided specific instructions for securing the research if hostile interests attempted to gain access to the property. Rachel, the letter read, "Major energy companies have become aware of my work and are actively seeking to acquire or suppress these technologies. If anyone approaches claiming ownership, rights, or offering to purchase the patents, do not engage without legal representation. I've prepared secure copies of all critical research with trusted allies who can ensure the innovations survive even if something happens to the primary archive. Your inheritance includes more than valuable technology, includes a mission to ensure these innovations serve humanity rather than corporate profits." The warning proved prophetic sooner than Rachel could have imagined. As she and Jake finished exploring the secure archive and returned to the main house, they noticed unfamiliar vehicles parked at the end of their gravel driveway to black SUVs with tinted windows and corporate license plates. Rachel's instincts, honed by years of navigating medical crises and urban dangers, immediately sensed threat. She quietly instructed Jake to stay inside while she approached the vehicles from a position where she could retreat quickly if necessary. 3 individuals in expensive business attire emerged from the SUVs as she approached 2 men and a woman, all carrying leather briefcases and wearing expressions of professional courtesy that didn't reach their eyes. "Miss Torres," the older man called out, his tone friendly but somehow predatory. "I'm Robert Hamilton, Director of Strategic Acquisitions for Titan Energy Corporation. We were hoping to speak with you about some technical materials that may have been left on this property by the previous owner." Rachel maintained her distance and kept her expression neutral. Technical materials. Engineering documents, patent applications, research prototypes. A separate folder contained correspondence with environmental organizations, university research programs, and international development agencies, all expressing interest in Eleanor's work. Letters from representatives in developing countries requested information about adapting her technologies for remote communities lacking access to reliable electricity. University researchers praised her innovations as breakthrough developments that could democratize clean energy access. Scope of Eleanor's vision was breathtaking and terrifying. Rachel was beginning to understand that her inheritance included not just valuable patents, but responsibility for technologies that could transform global energy production if properly developed and implemented. The weight of such responsibility felt overwhelming for someone whose previous experience with complex systems involved mechanical ventilators rather than hydroelectric generators. Her phone rang, interrupting her contemplation of Eleanor's legacy. The caller ID showed Dr. Rodriguez, Jake's endocrinologist from Denver, returning her call about transferring care to a specialist in Boulder. "Rachel, I've been in contact with Dr. Patricia Vance at the University of Colorado," Dr. Rodriguez reported. "She's one of the top pediatric endocrinologists in the region and has experience with complex cases like Jake's. I've forwarded all his records, and she can see you next week for an initial consultation." The news provided reassurance that Jake's medical needs could be properly managed in their new location, removing one major source of anxiety about their dramatic life change. Dr. Rodriguez also mentioned that CU's medical center had excellent respiratory therapy programs and was actively recruiting qualified therapists for their pediatric unit. "There's something else," Dr. Rodriguez continued. Dr. Vance mentioned that the mountain environment often provides significant benefits for children with asthma and diabetes. The clean air and reduced stress can lead to dramatic improvements in both conditions. Jake might actually be healthier in Colorado than he was in Denver. After ending the call, Rachel felt a surge of optimism about the Sheriff Maria Gonzalez arrived within an hour, her presence both reassuring and validating Rachel's concerns. "We've had reports of similar visits to other properties in the county," Gonzalez explained, corporate representatives claiming to search for technical documents or research materials. Usually happens after someone inherits property from a deceased relative who worked in technical fields. The sheriff's casual mention of a pattern suggested this wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a systematic effort to locate and acquire valuable intellectual property from deceased inventors' estates. I advise is to be very careful about any offers or claims regarding ownership of materials on your property, Sheriff Gonzalez continued. If you inherited something valuable, there are proper legal channels for verifying ownership disputes. Don't let anyone pressure you into quick decisions or surrender materials without proper legal review. After the sheriff departed, Rachel sat on Eleanor's porch with Jake, watching the sunset paint the mountains in brilliant colors while processing the day's revelations. In less than 24 hours, their inheritance had transformed from a simple property bequest into something resembling a treasure hunt with potentially dangerous complications. "Mom," Jake said quietly, his 7-year-old voice carrying unusual seriousness, "those people seemed scary, like they wanted something that didn't belong to them." Rachel pulled her son close, marveling at his perceptive understanding of the situation. "I think you're right, buddy. But Aunt Eleanor left us instructions about what to do if people like that showed up. We're going to be very careful and very smart about protecting what she wanted us to have." As darkness settled over Pine Ridge, County Rachel realized that Eleanor's inheritance included far more than valuable patents and research documentation. She had also inherited responsibility for protecting revolutionary technologies from corporate interests that would prefer to suppress rather than implement innovations that threatened their existing business models. The broken dam that had initially seemed like a maintenance headache was beginning to reveal its true significance as the foundation for technologies that could transform renewable energy production. And Rachel Torres, who had come to Colorado, seeking only a fresh start for herself and her son, was about to become the guardian of innovations that powerful people would do anything to control. But first, she needed to understand exactly what Eleanor had created and why it was valuable enough to attract immediate corporate attention. The secure archive in the basement contained answers that would determine not just their financial future, but potentially the trajectory of clean energy development worldwide. As Jake fell asleep in his new bedroom, surrounded by the peaceful sounds of a mountain night, Rachel returned to Eleanor's research archive to begin learning about technologies that could change the world and understanding why some people desperately wanted to ensure they never saw the light of day. The following morning brought an unexpected visitor who would change everything about Rachel's understanding of her situation. Dr. James Mitchell, a distinguished professor of renewable energy engineering from Colorado State University, arrived. At their door, carrying a worn leather briefcase and wearing an expression of urgency mixed with profound respect, "Miss Torres, I apologize for appearing unannounced," he began, his silver hair catching the morning sunlight. "I'm Professor Mitchell from CSU's Department of Renewable Energy Systems. Eleanor Hartwell was a dear friend and one of the most brilliant engineers I've ever known. I received word of her passing and wanted to offer my condolences, if you'll accept it." Rachel invited him in, immediately sensing that this visit was fundamentally different from yesterday's corporate intimidation. "Professor?" Mitchell moved through Eleanor's house with the familiarity of someone who had been a welcome guest, pausing to examine technical drawings and prototypes with the reverence of a colleague rather than the predatory interest of the Titan Energy representatives. "Eleanor mentioned you in our conversations over the past year," Mitchell continued, settling into Eleanor's favorite chair by the fireplace. "She spoke of your strength, your dedication to your son despite impossible circumstances, and your integrity under pressure. She believed you possessed the qualities necessary to protect her life's work from those who would exploit or suppress it." Jake appeared at Rachel's side, drawn by curiosity about their distinguished visitor. Mitchell's demeanor immediately shifted to the patient warmth of someone accustomed to explaining complex concepts to young minds. "You must be Jake," Mitchell said, with a genuine smile. "Your great-great-aunt told me about your interest in rocks and nature. She thought you might appreciate learning about how water can be transformed into electricity through some very clever engineering. Is that what all those machines in the shed do?" Jake asked, his eyes lighting up with the curiosity that had characterized his exploration of their new property. "Among other things, yes," Mitchell replied. "Your Aunt Eleanor developed ways to generate clean electricity that are decades ahead of anything currently being used commercially. Her innovations could help solve some of humanity's biggest energy challenges while actually helping the environment, rather than harming it." Rachel appreciated Mitchell's ability to explain complex concepts in terms Jake could understand, but she needed more specific information about what they'd actually inherited. Professor Mitchell, I've been trying to understand Eleanor's research, but most of it is beyond my background. Can you help me grasp the significance of what she developed? Mitchell opened his briefcase and withdrew a tablet computer, which he used to display a series of technical diagrams and performance comparisons. Eleanor's breakthrough was developing hydroelectric systems that operate efficiently with minimal water flow and virtually no environmental impact. Traditional hydroelectric dams require massive water reserves and often devastate local ecosystems. Eleanor's innovations generate comparable power, using less than 15% of the water flow while actually improving river health. The implications began to crystallize as Mitchell continued his explanation. Eleanor hadn't simply improved existing technology, she had fundamentally reimagined the relationship between energy generation and natural water systems. Her microturbine arrays could be installed in streams, irrigation channels, even municipal water systems, generating clean electricity without the massive infrastructure projects that characterize conventional hydroelectric development. The market potential is extraordinary, Mitchell continued, displaying financial projections on his tablet. Conservative estimates suggest Eleanor's patent portfolio could be worth over $200 million if properly licensed. But more importantly, widespread implementation of her technologies could transform rural energy access worldwide while contributing to climate change mitigation efforts. Rachel felt simultaneously thrilled and terrified by the scope of what she'd inherited. Professor, I'm a respiratory therapist, not an engineer. How am I supposed to protect and develop technologies I barely understand? The same way Eleanor did? Mitchell replied with confidence that surprised her. By surrounding yourself with trustworthy allies who share her vision for sustainable energy development. Eleanor didn't work alone. She maintained relationships with researchers, environmentalists, and progressive energy companies who understand the importance of her innovations. Mitchell explained that Eleanor had carefully built a network of supporters who could help implement her technologies while honoring her environmental and social values. Universities, international development organizations, and smaller energy companies had all expressed interest in collaborative development rather than exclusive corporate control. However, Mitchell's expression grew serious. You need to understand that major energy corporations view Eleanor's work as a significant threat to their existing infrastructure investments. Traditional utility companies have billions of dollars invested in centralized power generation systems that Eleanor's innovations could make obsolete. The warning echoed Eleanor's own concerns documented in her journals and final letters. Rachel was beginning to understand that her inheritance included not just valuable technology, but also the opposition of powerful interests who preferred that such innovations remain buried. What would Eleanor want me to do? Rachel asked, seeking guidance from someone who had known her great-aunt's intentions better than anyone else. Mitchell smiled, apparently recognizing Eleanor's influence in the question. She wanted her technologies to serve communities that have been overlooked by traditional energy development rural areas, developing regions and populations struggling with energy poverty. Eleanor believed that breakthrough innovations should benefit humanity broadly rather than generating maximum profit for a few corporations. Over the next several hours, Mitchell provided Rachel with a comprehensive education in Eleanor's work and its implications. They examined prototype devices in the equipment shed, reviewed patent documentation in the secure archive, and discussed implementation strategies that Eleanor had developed over decades of careful planning. The centerpiece of Eleanor's vision was transforming Silverbrook Dam into a demonstration project that would prove her technology's effectiveness while generating significant revenue to fund broader implementation. According to Mitchell's analysis, upgrading the dam with Eleanor's innovations would cost approximately $2.3 million, but would generate over $4.2 million annually in clean energy sales while creating dozens of local jobs. More importantly, Mitchell explained, a successful demonstration at Silverbrook would provide proof of concept data that could attract international investment in similar projects. Eleanor envisioned a network of small-scale environmentally integrated power generation facilities that could transform rural economies while contributing to global sustainability goals. The vision was inspiring, but seemed impossibly ambitious for someone in Rachel's circumstances. The $2.3 million required for the dam upgrade represented more money than she'd earned in her entire career as a respiratory therapist. Even with Eleanor's patent portfolio as collateral, securing such funding would require navigating complex financial and regulatory processes she had no experience managing. "I want to honor Eleanor's vision," Rachel said honestly, "but I have no idea how to raise millions of dollars or manage engineering projects. Jake's health has to be my priority, and I can't risk his stability for possibilities I might not be able to achieve." Mitchell nodded understandingly. "Eleanor anticipated your concerns and developed a phased approach that minimizes risk while building toward larger goals. Phase 1 involves documenting and securing the patent portfolio through proper legal channels essential. Protection regardless of your ultimate decisions. Phase 2 focuses on small-scale implementations that generate revenue and prove the technology's effectiveness. Phase 3 would be the full dam upgrade, but only after the earlier phases have established financial stability and technical credibility. The structured approach felt more manageable than attempting to implement Eleanor's complete vision immediately. Rachel appreciated that Eleanor had designed a pathway that prioritized security and gradual progress over dramatic gestures that could fail catastrophically. Jake, who had been listening to their conversation with remarkable attention for a 7-year-old, suddenly spoke up. "Professor Mitchell, could Aunt Eleanor's inventions help other kids like me who have to live in places with dirty air?" The question demonstrated Jake's intuitive understanding of the broader implications of Eleanor's work. Mitchell's expression softened with admiration for the child's insight. "Absolutely, Jake. Clean energy reduces air pollution that can trigger asthma attacks and other health problems. Your Aunt Eleanor was particularly concerned about communities where children suffer from respiratory problems caused by pollution from coal and oil power plants." Rachel felt a surge of determination as she realized that Eleanor's mission aligned perfectly with her own priorities as Jake's mother. Implementing Eleanor's technologies wouldn't just honor her great-aunt's legacy, could contribute to creating a world where children like Jake could breathe freely and live healthily. "What's our first step?" Rachel asked, her decision crystallizing around the realization that Eleanor's vision served goals larger than personal financial security. Mitchell smiled, apparently recognizing the moment when uncertainty transformed into commitment. "Legal protection for the patent portfolio. I can recommend attorneys who specialize in intellectual property law and have experience dealing with corporate attempts to suppress breakthrough innovations." He provided contact information for Sarah Kim, a patent attorney in Denver who had successfully defended independent inventors against major corporate challenges. Kim had particular experience with renewable energy patents and understood the strategies large companies use to acquire or invalidate threatening technologies. "Second," Mitchell continued, "we need to implement comprehensive security for Eleanor's research. The Titan Energy visit suggests that corporate intelligence operations are already monitoring the situation. We should assume they're actively seeking ways to access or undermine Eleanor's work." The security concerns added another layer of complexity to Rachel's situation. She had never imagined that inheriting property could involve protecting valuable research from corporate espionage. But Eleanor's warnings and the immediate appearance of Titan Energy representatives suggested such concerns were entirely justified. Mitchell spent the remainder of the morning helping Rachel establish secure communication systems and document storage procedures that would protect Eleanor's research from unauthorized access. He also provided contact information for trusted allies in the engineering and environmental communities who could offer technical and strategic support as needed. "Remember," Mitchell emphasized as he prepared to leave, "Eleanor chose you for this responsibility because she recognized qualities you may not fully appreciate in yourself. Your experience navigating complex medical systems, advocating for Jake's needs despite institutional obstacles, and maintaining integrity under financial pressure, these are precisely the skills required to protect and develop breakthrough innovations." After Mitchell's departure, Rachel felt both energized and overwhelmed by the scope of what lay ahead. Eleanor's inheritance had evolved from a simple property bequest into a mission that could potentially impact global energy development while serving communities that desperately needed sustainable alternatives to expensive, polluting power. Over the next several hours, Mitchell provided Rachel with a comprehensive education in Eleanor's work and its implications. They examined prototype devices in the equipment shed, reviewed patent documentation in the secure archive, and discussed implementation strategies that Eleanor had developed over decades of careful planning. The centerpiece of Eleanor's vision was transforming Silverbrook Dam into a demonstration project that would prove her technology's effectiveness while generating significant revenue to fund broader implementation. According to Mitchell's analysis, upgrading the dam with Eleanor's innovations would cost approximately $2.3 million, but would generate over $4.2 million annually in clean energy sales while creating dozens of local jobs. More importantly, Mitchell explained, a successful demonstration at Silverbrook would provide proof of concept data that could attract international investment in similar projects. Eleanor envisioned a network of small-scale environmentally integrated power generation facilities that could transform rural economies while contributing to global sustainability goals. The vision was inspiring, but seemed impossibly ambitious for someone in Rachel's circumstances. The $2.3 million required for the dam upgrade represented more money than she'd earned in her entire career as a respiratory therapist. Even with Eleanor's patent portfolio as collateral, securing such funding would require navigating complex financial and regulatory processes she had no experience managing. I want to honor Eleanor's vision, Rachel said honestly, but I have no idea how to raise millions of dollars or manage engineering projects. Jake's health has to be my priority, and I can't risk his stability for possibilities I might not be able to achieve. Mitchell nodded understandingly. Eleanor anticipated your concerns and developed a phased approach that minimizes risk while building toward larger goals. Phase 1 involves documenting and securing the patent portfolio through proper legal channels essential. Protection regardless of your ultimate decisions. Phase 2 focuses on small-scale implementations that generate revenue and prove the technology's effectiveness. Phase 3 would be the full dam upgrade, but only after the earlier phases have established financial stability and technical credibility. The structured approach felt more manageable than attempting to implement Eleanor's complete vision immediately. Rachel appreciated that Eleanor had designed a pathway that prioritized security and gradual progress over dramatic gestures that could fail catastrophically. Jake, who had been listening to their conversation with remarkable attention for a 7-year-old, suddenly spoke up. Professor Mitchell, could Aunt Eleanor's inventions help other kids like me who have to live in places with dirty air? The question demonstrated Jake's intuitive understanding of the broader implications of Eleanor's work. Mitchell's expression softened with admiration for the child's insight. Absolutely, Jake. Clean energy reduces air pollution that can trigger asthma attacks and other health problems. Your Aunt Eleanor was particularly concerned about communities where children suffer from respiratory problems caused by pollution from coal and oil power plants. Rachel felt a surge of determination as she realized that Eleanor's mission aligned perfectly with her own priorities as Jake's mother. Implementing Eleanor's technologies wouldn't just honor her. That evening, as Rachel reviewed Eleanor's research documentation and prepared for the complex legal and technical challenges ahead, she reflected on how dramatically her life had transformed in just 3 days. She had arrived in Pine Ridge County, seeking only a fresh start and financial stability for herself and Jake. Instead, she had inherited responsibility for technologies that could revolutionize sustainable energy, while becoming the target of corporate interests determined to suppress such innovations. Jake appeared at her side, carrying one of Eleanor's technical journals and wearing an expression of curiosity mixed with concern. Mom, are we going to be able to keep Aunt Eleanor's inventions safe from those scary people? Rachel pulled her son close, feeling a surge of determination that surprised her with its intensity. Yes, sweetheart. We're going to protect what Aunt Eleanor created, and we're going to make sure her inventions help people the way she wanted. Them too? Even if it's dangerous? Jake asked, with the direct honesty that characterized his approach to difficult topics. Rachel considered the question seriously, recognizing that her answer would establish the framework for decisions that would determine their future. Eleanor had faced decades of corporate pressure and had chosen to continue her work despite personal risks. Professor Mitchell had confirmed that implementing Eleanor's vision would require confronting powerful interests who preferred that breakthrough innovations remain buried. Jake, sometimes the most important things we can do involve some risk, Rachel replied carefully. But we're not going to do anything that puts you in danger. We're going to be very smart, very careful, and we're going to work with good people who want to help us succeed. Like Professor Mitchell, exactly like Professor Mitchell, the lawyers like Ms. Kim who know how to protect inventors from big companies that try to steal their ideas. Jake nodded solemnly, processing this explanation with the seriousness that had characterized his approach to complex situations. Throughout his young life, I think Aunt Eleanor knew you would take good care of her inventions. As they prepared for bed in their new home, surrounded by the peaceful sounds of a Colorado mountain night, Rachel realized that Eleanor's inheritance had provided something more valuable than financial security or even world-changing technology. It had given her a purpose worthy of the strength and determination she had developed through years of overcoming impossible challenges. The broken dam that had initially seemed like another burden was revealing itself as the foundation for innovations that could transform not just their lives but potentially the future of sustainable energy development. Rachel Torres, who had come to Pine Ridge County seeking only stability for her son, was about to embark on a mission that could change the world. But first, needed to secure Eleanor's legacy against corporate interests that viewed breakthrough innovations as threats rather than opportunities. The real challenge was just beginning. Rachel was determined to prove worthy of the trust Eleanor had placed in her. Tomorrow would bring the first concrete steps toward protecting and implementing Eleanor's vision patent applications, legal structures, strategic partnerships that could ensure her great-aunt's revolutionary technologies serve their intended purpose of creating a more sustainable world for Jake's generation and beyond. The commitment had been made. Now came the much harder work of fulfilling it. The next week brought a whirlwind of activity that transformed Rachel's understanding of both Eleanor's work and the broader implications of their inheritance. Sarah Kim's legal team had moved with impressive speed to begin formal patent protection processes, while Professor Mitchell coordinated with colleagues at 3 universities to establish independent verification of Eleanor's innovations. But it was the arrival of Dr. Elena Vasquez from the International Renewable Energy Cooperative that provided Rachel's first real glimpse into the global significance of what Eleanor had created. Dr. Vasquez, a distinguished engineer who had spent 2 decades implementing sustainable energy projects in developing regions, had flown from Costa Rica specifically to examine Eleanor's research. Professor Mitchell shared some of Eleanor's preliminary data with our technical committee. Dr. Vasquez explained as she carefully examined the prototype devices in Eleanor's workshop. What we've seen suggests breakthrough capabilities that could transform energy access in remote communities worldwide. Jake, who had appointed himself as the unofficial tour guide for their growing number of visitors, proudly demonstrated his expanding knowledge of Eleanor's innovations. This turbine can make electricity from really small streams, he announced, pointing to one of Eleanor's most elegant prototypes. And it doesn't hurt the fish or change how the water flows naturally. Dr. Vasquez smiled at Jake's enthusiastic explanation while noting the sophisticated engineering that made such capabilities possible. Your great-great-aunt was remarkable, Jake. These designs solve problems that have challenged engineers for decades. Rachel watched with growing amazement as Dr. Vasquez documented Eleanor's innovations with the reverence typically reserved for major scientific breakthroughs. The prototype represented solutions to specific challenges that had limited sustainable energy implementation in environmentally sensitive areas or communities with minimal technical infrastructure. The microturbine array system alone could revolutionize rural electrification programs. Dr. Vasquez continued photographing detailed specifications with Eleanor's permission protocols that Rachel had established. Traditional hydroelectric projects require massive capital investments and often destroy local ecosystems. Eleanor's approach generates comparable power with minimal environmental impact and significantly lower implementation costs. The international perspective provided by Dr. Vasquez helped Rachel understand why corporations like Titan Energy viewed Eleanor's work as threatening rather than beneficial. Eleanor's innovations could democratize energy access by making sustainable power generation economically viable for communities that major utility companies considered unprofitable markets. Dr. Vasquez, what would implementation look like in practice? Rachel asked, seeking concrete understanding of how Eleanor's vision could be realized. The beauty of Eleanor's designs is their scalability and adaptability, Dr. Vasquez replied, displaying tablet images of similar installations in various international settings. A single microturbine unit could power a rural clinic or school. Arrays of units could electrify entire villages. Larger installations like your Silverbrook Dam could power regional grids while actually improving watershed health. Was interrupted that evening as Rachel reviewed Eleanor's research documentation and prepared for the complex legal and technical challenges ahead. She reflected on how dramatically her life had transformed in just 3 days. She had arrived in Pine Ridge County, seeking only a fresh start and financial stability for herself and Jake. Instead, she had inherited responsibility for technologies that could revolutionize sustainable energy, while becoming the target of corporate interests determined to suppress such innovations. Jake appeared at her side, carrying one of Eleanor's technical journals and wearing an expression of curiosity mixed with concern. "Mom, are we going to be able to keep Aunt Eleanor's inventions safe from those scary people?" Rachel pulled her son close, feeling a surge of determination that surprised her with its intensity. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to protect what Aunt Eleanor created, and we're going to make sure her inventions help people the way she wanted. Them too? Even if it's dangerous?" Jake asked, with the direct honesty that characterized his approach to difficult topics. Rachel considered the question seriously, recognizing that her answer would establish the framework for decisions that would determine their future. Eleanor had faced decades of corporate pressure and had chosen to continue her work despite personal risks. Professor Mitchell had confirmed that implementing Eleanor's vision would require confronting powerful interests who preferred that breakthrough innovations remain buried. "Jake, sometimes the most important things we can do involve some risk," Rachel replied carefully. "But we're not going to do anything that puts you in danger. We're going to be very smart, very careful, and we're going to work with good people who want to help us succeed." Like Professor Mitchell, exactly like Professor Mitchell, the lawyers like Ms. Kim who know how to protect inventors. What happened in other cases when inventors or their heirs refused to sell? Rachel asked, though she suspected the answer would be troubling. Thompson's expression grew serious. Legal challenges claiming prior ownership or patent invalidity. Harassment campaigns designed to exhaust financial resources. And in some cases, mysterious accidents or health problems affecting key individuals involved in technology development. The implications sent a chill through Rachel despite the warm Colorado afternoon. Eleanor's warnings about corporate suppression had seemed abstractly concerning, but Thompson's documentation revealed systematic efforts to eliminate threats too. Existing energy industry profits through methods that went well beyond normal business competition. Dr. Vasquez, who had been listening to Thompson's explanation with growing concern, offered a different perspective on managing such challenges. This is precisely why international collaboration is essential for protecting breakthrough innovations. When technologies are simultaneously developed in multiple countries with different legal systems, corporate suppression becomes much more difficult to achieve. She explained that the International Renewable Energy Cooperative had established protocols for protecting revolutionary technologies through distributed development networks that prevented any single corporate entity from controlling or suppressing beneficial innovations. Eleanor's work could be protected by implementing it simultaneously in multiple countries while maintaining legal ownership through carefully structured international partnerships. We could begin with pilot projects in 3 countries: Costa Rica, Kenya, and the Philippines, where Eleanor's technologies address critical energy access challenges, Dr. Vasquez proposed. International implementation would establish proof of concept data while creating legal precedents that protect your patent rights from domestic corporate interference. The international strategy appealed to Rachel because it aligned with Eleanor's vision of serving underserved communities while providing practical protection. against corporate suppression efforts. However, it also represented a level of complexity and responsibility that seemed overwhelming for someone whose previous experience involved managing medical equipment rather than international technology development. Jake, who had been following the conversation with remarkable attention, suddenly asked a question that cut to the heart of Rachel's concerns. "Mom, if we help people in other countries get electricity, will that keep the scary company from stealing Aunt Eleanor's inventions?" Dr. Vasquez answered with the patient clarity she typically used when explaining complex concepts to community leaders in rural development settings. "That's exactly right, Jake. When helpful technologies are being used in many different places, it becomes much harder for selfish companies to make them disappear." Thompson nodded agreement while making notes for his story. International implementation creates multiple legal jurisdictions where patent rights are established and protected. Even if Titan Energy successfully challenges Eleanor's patents in U.S. courts, they can't prevent international development that proves the technology's effectiveness and establishes prior use precedents. The afternoon's discussions transformed Rachel's understanding of the strategic landscape surrounding Eleanor's inheritance. What had initially seemed like a choice between personal financial security and honoring her great-aunt's legacy was revealing itself as a complex challenge requiring international coordination, sophisticated legal strategies, in collaboration with organizations she had never imagined engaging with as a respiratory therapist from Denver. That evening, after their visitors had departed, and Jake was settled with homework that seemed remarkably easier to complete in their quiet mountain environment, Rachel sat on Eleanor's porch, reviewing the day's revelations while watching sunset. Paint the mountains in brilliant colors. The scope of responsibility associated with Eleanor's legacy continued to expand beyond anything she had initially imagined. Dr. Vasquez's international implementation proposal offered pathways for protecting and developing Eleanor's innovations while serving communities that desperately needed sustainable energy access. Thompson's documentation of corporate suppression efforts provided crucial intelligence about the opposition she would face. Professor Mitchell's ongoing coordination with university researchers established credible technical validation for Eleanor's work. But each opportunity also brought additional complexity that stretched Rachel's capabilities and resources. International development projects required expertise she didn't possess. Legal challenges from corporations like Titan Energy could consume years and hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. Media attention from Thompson's story would likely attract additional corporate and governmental scrutiny. Her phone rang, interrupting her contemplation of these challenges. The caller ID showed Dr. Patricia Vance, pediatric endocrinologist who had agreed to coordinate Jake's medical care in Colorado. "Rachel, I've reviewed Jake's medical records and I'm pleased to report that his transition to our care should be seamless," Dr. Vance announced. "More importantly, I think the mountain environment is already providing measurable benefits for both his asthma and diabetes management." The news provided reassurance that their dramatic life change was indeed serving Jake's health needs as Rachel had hoped. Dr. Vance's analysis confirmed that the clean air, reduced stress, and increased physical activity associated with their rural lifestyle were contributing to improved respiratory function and more stable blood sugar control. "I'd also like to discuss something else," Dr. Vance continued. "I understand you're a respiratory therapist with extensive experience in pediatric care. Our medical center has been seeking someone with your qualifications to help develop our pediatric respiratory therapy program. Would you be interested in discussing a position that could accommodate your current circumstances?" The job offer resolved one of Rachel's remaining concerns about their long-term financial stability. Employment at a respected medical center would provide steady income and health insurance while allowing her to continue working in her chosen profession. What happened in other cases when inventors or their heirs refused to sell? Rachel asked, though she suspected the answer would be troubling. Thompson's expression grew serious. Legal challenges claiming prior ownership or patent invalidity. Harassment campaigns designed to exhaust financial resources. And in some cases, mysterious accidents or health problems affecting key individuals involved in technology development. The implications sent a chill through Rachel despite the warm Colorado afternoon. Eleanor's warnings about corporate suppression had seemed abstractly concerning, But Thompson's documentation revealed systematic efforts to eliminate threats too. Existing energy industry profits through methods that went well beyond normal business competition. Dr. Vasquez, who had been listening to Thompson's explanation with growing concern, offered a different perspective on managing such challenges. This is precisely why international collaboration is essential for protecting breakthrough innovations. When technologies are simultaneously developed in multiple countries with different legal systems, corporate suppression becomes much more difficult to achieve. She explained that the International Renewable Energy Cooperative had established protocols for protecting revolutionary technologies through distributed development networks that prevented any single corporate entity from controlling or suppressing beneficial innovations. Eleanor's work could be protected by implementing it simultaneously in multiple countries while maintaining legal ownership through carefully structured international partnerships. We could begin with pilot projects in 3 countries: Costa Rica, Kenya, and the Philippines, where Eleanor's technologies address critical energy access challenges, Dr. Vasquez proposed. International implementation would establish proof of concept data while creating legal precedents that protect your patent rights from domestic corporate interference. The international strategy appealed to Rachel because it aligned with Eleanor's vision of serving underserved communities while providing practical protection against corporate suppression efforts. However, it also represented a level of complexity and responsibility that seemed overwhelming for someone whose previous experience involved managing medical equipment rather than international technology development. Jake, who had been following Professor Mitchell's excited response when Rachel called to report their discovery, confirmed its significance. Eleanor mentioned field testing. I didn't realize she had established such a comprehensive demonstration installation. This data will be invaluable for patent protection and commercial implementation planning. The creek installation also explains several mysteries about their property that Rachel had noticed but hadn't understood. The house's electrical bills were remarkably low, despite heating and cooling a large structure, suggesting supplemental power generation. Several outbuildings appeared to have more electrical capacity than their apparent functions would require. Eleanor had apparently been living largely off-grid, using her own innovations. While documenting their performance for eventual commercial development, Dr. Vasquez's reaction, when she returned to examine the creek installation, bordered on professional euphoria. Rachel, this changes everything about international implementation timelines. We have 18 months of continuous performance data proving system reliability, efficiency rates, and environmental compatibility. This installation alone provides evidence that could accelerate regulatory approval processes by years. The excitement was justified. But it also intensified the pressure Rachel felt about making correct decisions regarding Eleanor's legacy. The creek installation proved that Eleanor's technologies worked exactly as designed, making their commercial potential undeniable while also making them more attractive targets for corporate suppression efforts. That afternoon brought confirmation of Dr. Vasquez's assessment when Sarah Kim called with news about the patent protection process. Rachel, the preliminary technical review has been extraordinary. Eleanor's patent applications include performance data and testing documentation that patent examiners rarely see. We should expect expedited approval for several key patents within the next 60 days. The accelerated patent timeline created both opportunities and risks that Rachel was still learning to navigate. Approved patents would provide legal protection for Eleanor's innovations while establishing their commercial value beyond dispute. However, patent approval would also make Eleanor's work more visible to corporate interests that preferred such technologies remain buried. Sarah, what should I expect once the patents are approved? Rachel asked, seeking guidance about the challenges that successful patent protection might create. Increased corporate pressure, almost certainly, Kim replied honestly. Companies, like Titan Energy, typically escalate their acquisition efforts once patent approvals establish undeniable commercial value. We should expect larger financial offers accompanied by more sophisticated legal and business pressure. The warning reminded Rachel that patent protection was just the beginning of a longer process of defending Eleanor's innovations against interests that viewed breakthrough technologies as threats rather than opportunities. Each success in developing Eleanor's legacy would likely attract stronger opposition from those who benefited from existing energy industry limitations. As evening approached, and Jake settled into homework that he completed with unprecedented ease in their quiet rural environment, Rachel reflected on how much had changed in just 1 week since their arrival in Pine Ridge County. Eleanor's inheritance had revealed itself as far more significant than a simple property bequest, involving technologies that could transform global energy access, while creating responsibilities that stretched Rachel's capabilities and resources. But the week had also demonstrated that Eleanor's careful planning had anticipated many of the challenges Rachel would face. Trusted allies like Professor Mitchell and Dr. Vasquez provided technical expertise and strategic guidance. Legal protection, through Sarah Kim's efforts, established secure foundations for future development. The creek installation proved that Eleanor's innovations worked exactly as promised while providing performance data that could accelerate commercial implementation. Most importantly, Jake's obvious happiness and improved health in their new environment confirmed that their dramatic life change was serving his needs, while positioning them to honor Eleanor's legacy. The clean mountain air, peaceful rural lifestyle, and sense of purpose associated with protecting breakthrough technologies had transformed both their daily experience and their long-term prospects. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities. As patent approvals advanced and international collaboration possibilities expanded. But tonight, as Rachel tucked Jake into bed in their spacious rural home, surrounded by the peaceful sounds of a Colorado mountain night and the quiet hum of Eleanor's microturbines generating clean electricity from their creek, she felt confident that they were exactly where Eleanor had intended them to be. The surface-level exploration of Eleanor's work was revealing depths and implications that promised to transform not just their own lives, but potentially the future of sustainable energy development worldwide. Rachel Torres, who had arrived in Pine Ridge County seeking only a fresh start, was discovering that Eleanor's inheritance included opportunities to create the kind of world Jake deserved to inherit. 6 months after inheriting Eleanor's broken dam, Rachel Torres stood on the observation platform, overlooking the newly restored Silverbrook Dam, watching the first commercial-scale implementation of her great-aunt's revolutionary hydroelectric technology generate clean electricity for 3 surrounding counties. The transformation was breathtaking, not just of the dam itself, but of everything it represented for the future of sustainable energy development. The morning sun reflected off the pristine water flowing through Eleanor's innovative microturbine arrays, which had been seamlessly integrated into the dam's structure during a remarkable restoration process that had attracted international attention. It's unlike traditional hydroelectric installations that disrupted natural water flow and aquatic ecosystems. Eleanor's design actually improved river health while generating 340% more electricity than conventional systems using the same water volume. Jake, now 8 years old and thriving in the clean mountain air, pointed excitedly at the fish ladder Eleanor had incorporated into her design. "Mom, look how many fish are swimming up the river. Dr. Vasquez said there are more fish now than there were before Aunt Eleanor's machines started working." Rachel smiled at her son's enthusiasm while marveling at how much their lives had transformed. Since that desperate day when they'd arrived in Pine Ridge County seeking only a fresh start, Jake's asthma had virtually disappeared in the clean mountain environment. His diabetes remained excellently controlled with the reduced stress and increased physical activity of their rural lifestyle. And his natural curiosity about engineering and environmental science had flourished under the guidance of the remarkable people Eleanor's legacy had brought into their lives. The sight of Jake running freely through meadows with their golden retriever, Luna dreamed that had seemed impossible during their confined urban existence, never failed to remind Rachel of why Eleanor's inheritance had been about far more than valuable technology or financial security. Eleanor had given them the possibility of a childhood filled with clean air, open spaces, and the kind of fundamental freedom that every parent hopes to provide, but circumstances often make impossible. Ms. Torres, the delegation from the African Union, is arriving for their site visit, announced Dr. Patricia Vance, who had transitioned from Jake's endocrinologist to become the project's medical and community health coordinator. The Silverbrook Dam demonstration had attracted attention from government representatives. international development organizations, and energy companies worldwide, all seeking to understand how Eleanor's innovations could be adapted to their specific circumstances and needs. The African Union delegation represented one of 12 international groups that had visited Silverbrook over the past 3 months, each exploring how Eleanor's technologies could address energy access challenges in their respective regions. The micro-turbine systems that powered their rural Colorado community had proven adaptable to vastly different environments, from irrigation channels in Kenya to municipal water systems in Costa Rica to remote streams in the Philippines. Dr. Alina Vasquez approached from the technical monitoring station, her tablet displaying real-time performance data that continued to exceed all projected efficiency benchmarks. Rachel, the 6-month performance review confirms everything Eleanor promised in her original projections. We're generating 4.2 million kilowatts annually while actually improving watershed health and aquatic biodiversity. The economic impact has been even more remarkable than we projected. The economic transformation of Pine Ridge County had been one of the most satisfying aspects of implementing Eleanor's vision. The Silverbrook project had created 127 permanent jobs in manufacturing, installation, maintenance, and monitoring of the microturbine systems. Local unemployment had dropped from 8.3% to 2.1%. As the renewable energy industry attracted supporting businesses and skilled workers to the region, more importantly, the revenue generated by clean energy sales had funded community improvements that benefited every resident. The elementary school where Jake was now thriving had received new science laboratories and environmental education programs. The medical center where Rachel worked part-time as a pediatric respiratory therapist had expanded its services and attracted additional specialists. The county had invested in high-speed internet infrastructure, attracting remote workers and small technology companies that appreciated the combination of rural lifestyle and modern connectivity. Sarah Kim, the patent attorney who had protected Eleanor's intellectual property through increasingly sophisticated corporate challenges, joined them on the observation platform with news that would secure Eleanor's legacy permanently. I've just received confirmation from the International Patent Office. Eleanor's core hydroelectric innovations have been granted full international patent protection across 47 countries. More importantly, the collaborative licensing structure we established means no single corporation can acquire exclusive control of the technologies. The legal victory represented the culmination of months of complex negotiations and strategic maneuvering that had successfully protected Eleanor's innovations from corporate suppression efforts. Titan Energy's attempts to challenge the patents had been decisively defeated, with federal judges ruling that the company's claims of prior ownership were entirely without merit and apparently designed to prevent beneficial technologies from reaching commercial implementation. The collaborative licensing model Sarah had developed ensured that Eleanor's technologies would be implemented by organizations committed to environmental sustainability and community benefit rather than maximum corporate profit. Energy cooperatives, international development organizations, municipalities worldwide could access the innovations through affordable licensing fees, while major corporations faced significantly higher costs and mandatory environmental compliance requirements. Professor James Mitchell approached with Marcus Thompson, investigative journalist whose coverage of corporate suppression efforts had helped protect Eleanor's work from the kind of systematic suppression that had buried other breakthrough technologies. Thompson's series of articles about Titan Energy's attempts to suppress Eleanor's innovations had attracted congressional attention and resulted in new legislation protecting independent inventors from corporate intimidation. Rachel, the Senate hearing on corporate suppression of renewable energy innovations begins next week, Thompson announced. Senator Williams wants you to testify about Eleanor's work and your experience with Titan Energy's pressure tactics. Your testimony could help establish legal protections for other inventors facing similar corporate interference. To testify before Congress represented recognition that Lena's story had implications extending far beyond their individual circumstances. Rachel had become an inadvertent spokesperson for independent inventors and communities, seeking alternatives to corporate-controlled energy systems. But she had never imagined her testimony could influence national energy policy. What would I tell them? Rachel asked, still feeling somewhat overwhelmed by the scope of her unexpected role in national renewable energy debates. Tell them the truth, Mitchell replied. Explain how Eleanor's innovations work, how they benefit communities and environments, and how corporate suppression efforts nearly prevented their implementation. Your experience demonstrates why breakthrough technologies need protection from interests that prioritize maintaining existing systems over developing beneficial innovations. Jake, who had been listening to their conversation while monitoring the fish ladder with scientific seriousness that would have made Eleanor proud, suddenly asked a question that captured the essence of their entire journey. Mom, if you tell the senators about Aunt Eleanor's inventions, will that help more kids like me get clean air and electricity that doesn't hurt the environment? Rachel knelt beside her son, struck by his intuitive understanding of the broader implications of Eleanor's work. That's exactly what we're hoping. Jake, Aunt Eleanor's inventions could help millions of children around the world live in places with clean air and reliable electricity. Then you should definitely talk to the senators, Jake declared with the conviction that had characterized his approach to important decisions throughout their remarkable journey. The afternoon brought the official ceremony dedicating the Silverbrook Dam as an international model for sustainable energy development, with representatives from 32 countries witnessing the formal recognition of Eleanor's innovations as breakthrough technologies worthy of global implementation. The ceremony represented more than acknowledgement of technical achievements. It established Eleanor's vision as a proven alternative to energy systems that prioritized corporate profits over community and environmental benefits, as Rachel addressed the international audience. She reflected on the extraordinary path that had brought them to this moment. Eleanor Hartwell believed that breakthrough innovations should serve humanity broadly rather than generating maximum profit for a few corporations. The success of the Silverbrook project proves that sustainable energy development can strengthen communities while healing rather than harming our environment. The applause that followed her remarks carried recognition that Eleanor's legacy extended far beyond technical innovations to encompass a fundamentally different approach to energy development that prioritized long-term sustainability over short-term profits. Representatives from developing countries spoke emotionally about how Eleanor's technologies could transform rural communities that had never had reliable electricity access. A delegate from Kenya described plans to implement Eleanor's microturbine systems in 17 villages currently without power, explaining how reliable electricity would enable schools to extend operating hours, medical clinics to refrigerate vaccines, and small businesses to expand their operations. A representative from Costa Rica outlined similar projects that would electrify remote communities while protecting sensitive watersheds that supported critical biodiversity. The evening celebration in the town hall of Pine Ridge County brought together local residents. More importantly, the revenue generated by clean energy sales had funded community improvements that benefited every resident. The elementary school where Jake was now thriving had received new science laboratories and environmental education programs. The medical center where Rachel worked part-time as a pediatric respiratory therapist had expanded its services and attracted additional specialists. The county had invested in high-speed internet infrastructure, attracting remote workers and small technology companies that appreciated the combination of rural lifestyle and modern connectivity. Sarah Kim, the patent attorney who had protected Eleanor's intellectual property through increasingly sophisticated corporate challenges, joined them on the observation platform with news that would secure Eleanor's legacy permanently. I've just received confirmation from the International Patent Office. Eleanor's core hydroelectric innovations have been granted full international patent protection across 47 countries. More importantly, the collaborative licensing structure we established means no single corporation can acquire exclusive control of the technologies. The legal victory represented the culmination of months of complex negotiations and strategic maneuvering that had successfully protected Eleanor's innovations from corporate suppression efforts. Titan Energy's attempts to challenge the patents had been decisively defeated, with federal judges ruling that the company's claims of prior ownership were entirely without merit and apparently designed to prevent beneficial technologies from reaching commercial implementation. The collaborative licensing model Sarah had developed ensured that Eleanor's technologies would be implemented by organizations committed to environmental sustainability and community benefit rather than maximum corporate profit. Energy cooperatives, international development organizations, municipalities worldwide could access the innovations through affordable licensing fees, while major corporations faced significantly higher costs and mandatory environmental compliance requirements. Professor James Mitchell approached with Marcus Thompson, investigative journalist whose coverage of corporate suppression efforts had helped protect Eleanor's work from the kind of systematic suppression that had buried other breakthrough technologies. Thompson's series of articles about Titan Energy's attempts to suppress Eleanor's innovations had attracted congressional attention and the simple statement captured the essence of their transformation from desperate urban refugees to guardians of world-changing technology. Rachel reflected on the courage it had required to abandon their familiar struggles for unknown possibilities, and the extraordinary sequence of events that had revealed Eleanor's inheritance as far more than financial salvation. The broken dam that had initially seemed like another burden had become the foundation for innovations that were transforming sustainable energy development worldwide. Eleanor's patents, now protected and implemented through collaborative licensing agreements, were generating revenue that ensured long-term financial security for Rachel and Jake. While funding continued research and development of even more advanced systems, more importantly, Lehner's vision of democratized clean energy was becoming reality through implementation projects in 43 countries. Communities that had never had reliable electricity were gaining access to sustainable power systems that strengthened local economies while protecting environmental resources. Rural areas that major utility companies considered unprofitable markets were achieving energy independence through locally controlled microturbine installations. The success had attracted attention from major energy corporations seeking to participate. And rather than suppress breakthrough technologies, several companies that had initially attempted to acquire Lehner's patents through pressure tactics were now requesting licensing agreements that would allow them to implement the innovations while adhering to environmental and community benefit requirements. Rachel's testimony before the Senate Energy Committee the following week would help establish legal protections for independent inventors and communities seeking alternatives to corporate-controlled energy systems. Legislation emerging from congressional hearings promised to prevent the kind of systematic suppression efforts that had threatened Eleanor's work while encouraging innovation in sustainable energy development. But perhaps the most satisfying outcome was the personal transformation that Lehner's legacy had created for Rachel and Jake, the respiratory therapist who had arrived in Pine Ridge County drowning in debt and desperate for a fresh start had become a leading advocate for collaborative technology development and community-controlled sustainable energy systems. Jake's asthma had essentially disappeared in the clean mountain environment. His diabetes remained excellently controlled with reduced stress and increased physical activity, and his natural curiosity about science and engineering was flourishing. Through educational programs made possible by the economic prosperity Eleanor's innovations had brought to their community, the golden retriever sleeping at Jake's feet represented dreams that had seemed impossible during their confined urban existence but had become reality through Eleanor's gift of space, clean air, and financial security. The peaceful rural lifestyle they now enjoyed was supported by meaningful work that contributed to solving global challenges rather than merely surviving day-to-day financial pressures. As stars emerged in the clear Colorado sky, unmarred by the light pollution that had obscured them during their urban years, Rachel felt profound gratitude for Eleanor's extraordinary gift. The inheritance had included far more than valuable patents or rural property. It had provided purpose worthy of the courage and determination Rachel had developed through years of overcoming impossible challenges. The broken dam that had exposed Eleanor's hidden vault had also revealed Rachel's own capacity to transcend conventional thinking and create new possibilities where others saw only familiar limitations. The divorced single mother who had sought only stability for her medically fragile son had discovered that she possessed the vision and determination necessary to protect and implement technologies that could transform global energy development. Eleanor's final letter, which Rachel had discovered in the secure archive months earlier, had proven prophetic. Extraordinary challenges often reveal extraordinary strength we didn't know we possessed. The challenges of protecting and implementing Eleanor's innovations had indeed revealed capabilities Rachel had never imagined in herself: the ability to navigate complex legal and technical systems, coordinate with international organizations, and advocate effectively for breakthrough technologies against sophisticated corporate opposition. But the greatest revelation had been that ordinary people could make extraordinary contributions when guided by clear principles and supported by allies who shared their vision. Professor Mitchell's technical expertise, Dr. Vasquez's international development experience, Sarah Kim's legal protection, Marcus Thompson's investigative journalism, and the support of their Pine Ridge County community had transformed Eleanor's individual innovations into a collaborative movement that was changing how sustainable energy technologies were developed and implemented worldwide. The success of the Silverbrook project had established a new model for breakthrough technology development that prioritized community benefit and environmental healing over corporate profits. Energy cooperatives, international development organizations, and progressive municipalities worldwide were adapting Eleanor's approach to create locally controlled sustainable energy systems that strengthened communities while contributing to global climate change mitigation efforts. As Rachel and Jake prepared for bed in their comfortable mountain home, surrounded by the peaceful sounds of clean water flowing through systems that generated electricity while enhancing rather than disrupting natural processes, Rachel reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this place of security, purpose, and hope. The broken dam that had initially seemed like a maintenance headache had revealed innovations worth over $200 million in patent value, but their true worth lay in the vision they represented for a fundamentally different relationship between human energy needs and natural systems. Eleanor's technologies were proving that sustainable energy development could heal rather than harm the environment, while empowering communities rather than concentrating power in corporate hands. 6 months after arriving in Pine Ridge County, seeking only a fresh start, Rachel Torres had become the guardian of innovations that were transforming global, sustainable energy development while providing her son with the kind of childhood every parent hopes to offer, filled with clean air, open spaces, meaningful work, and hope for a sustainable future. The divorced respiratory therapist who had inherited a broken dam had discovered that Eleanor's true gift was not technology or money, but purpose worthy of a lifetime's dedication. The vault beneath the cracked concrete had contained more than valuable patents. It had revealed possibilities for creating the kind of world Jake deserved to inherit, where breakthrough innovations served humanity's needs while healing rather than harming the planet that sustained them all. Eleanor Hartwell's vision was becoming reality, one community at a time, proving that extraordinary individuals could indeed create extraordinary change when guided by courage, integrity, and unwavering commitment to the greater good. The legacy she had entrusted to Rachel was now spreading worldwide, transforming not just energy systems, but demonstrating that a better future was possible when innovation served purpose rather than profit. As Luna settled beside Jake's bed, and the gentle hum of Eleanor's microturbines provided a peaceful soundtrack to their mountain night, Rachel felt certain that their extraordinary journey was just beginning. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities to expand Eleanor's vision, new communities to serve, new possibilities for creating a sustainable world worthy of the extraordinary woman who had made it all possible. The broken dam had been transformed, Eleanor's legacy was secure, and Rachel Torres, who had come to Colorado seeking only survival, had found instead a mission that could change the world. Thank you for watching this incredible journey of transformation and hope. If this story inspired you, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. We have more amazing stories of ordinary people creating extraordinary change that you won't want to miss. What's your country? Drop a comment below and let us know where you're tuning in from. Tomorrow we have another mind-blowing story that will leave you speechless about the power of never giving up on your dreams.